Hello everyone, my name is Michael Sells and this is week 10. So here we go. So in chapter 10, Stemple traces this mid 20th century moment when Broadway began to borrow operatic techniques. Things like through the composed music, recurring motives, hold on baby, more complex orchestration, not to necessarily copy opera, but to elevate the musical's dramatic and emotional power. So shows like, bless you, Porgy and Bess, Street Scene, and especially West Side Story, all of these shows serve as examples of what Stemple calls Broadway opera. These musicals, the, these musicals could carry operatic weight, sustain tragedy, intricate musical storytelling, while still being accessible to mainstream audiences. So what struck me is how intentional this hybridization was. It wasn't necessarily accidental or experimental, but rather Broadway was now aiming to expand its artistic range without leaving its audiences behind. And so in the essay, Cinderella Meets Cendrillon, we see an intersection with this idea in a very interesting way. I know, right? McQuaid and her colleagues focus on contemporary opera companies programming Broadway musicals, showing that the hybridization Stemple describes continues to have a life today. Opera houses stage musicals, and that attracts audiences and diversifies their programming. Performers often now at this point have to train across both forms. The essay, it shows that the influence flows both ways. Musicals adopt operatic technique and opera adopts musical theater accessibility. And so together, these two readings, they illustrate the artistic form's evolution, not to necessarily isolate it, but through dialogue and intersectionality with each other and with the audience and institutions that supports them. And so from this, you have the hybridization of the form, the technique shaping the storytelling, and then finally the institution and audience's importance in all of this. So, reflecting on these readings, I came to a conclusion that what we call genre or form is not necessarily fixed like we think it is. Musicals and opera evolve through mutual influence, ambition, technique, and audience engagement. The larger impact is very clear, or at least I think it is. These hybrid works expand what we expect from storytelling, showing that complexity and accessibility can exist together. So when we think they need to be separate, when in fact that's not the case, they can coexist, and that that intersectionality between the art forms produces something richer, something greater than either of them alone could do. So this reinforces an idea that I've been thinking about pretty much all semester, and that is that the art is its most powerful when it's willing to borrow, adapt, and engage in conversation with other forms, with the audience, and with tradition, while still creating something new. So, in other words, Broadway opera, it exemplifies that, and it's really interesting to see this dialogue today. So those are my thoughts on this week's reading. Thank you.